Well, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get begun. First of all, I have the great pleasure of introducing you and opening the first ever Fine International Conference on Gigapixel Imaging for Science. We couldn't think of a longer name, so we stuck with that. And it's very, very exciting for us to have the very first event of this international conference, which brings together 200 delegates from 14 different countries around the world here in the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. So the first thing I want to do is thank the Museum of Natural History, and in particular, Director Sam Taylor, for making this possible. So thank you very much, Sam. I'm also going to say thank you to all of you who have stuck your neck out and come to a first conference. That's always a risk. And we hope that over the next 2.5 days, you'll find that the conference brings together a diversity of people in an area of potentially disruptive change in how we view imaging and digital technology and the way cultures communicate with each other and about the environment. So we're very excited about that. I also want to put in one more thanks. I promise I'm not going to do a whole line of thanks here. But I do want to do a thanks to two other groups of people who are here. One is the staff of the Create Lab, who've been working for a very long time to make this conference a reality. So I'd like to ask them to stand up, please. I'll only embarrass you this once, I promise. And for those of you who haven't stood up yet, today is the conclusion of, I believe, the 4th Fine workshop on Gigapixel Imaging for Science that we've had. The Fine Foundation has been gracious enough to fund us to bring 30 to 40 scientists here every semester, every year, train them on gigapan technologies and gigapixel technologies in general, and watch them go out and do groundbreaking science. So the class of 2010 is here, the inductees into the Fine Fellowship Program. I'd like to ask them to stand up so you can recognize them as well. There's quite a number of them. So that's the largest class we've ever had. I know that you all have programs, and we'll be answering questions later on about the overall programs and arc of programming for the whole conference. But it's time to introduce our very first keynote speaker. And to do the introduction, I'm going to introduce Randy Bryant, who is my dean in the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University. Randy has been a real champion and advocate for Gigapan over the last several years. He's been at pretty much every major opening we've had, and he's come to the minor openings and has really enjoyed the technology. And so we're lucky to have a university and a dean that's been this welcoming of us taking risks with new technology. Randy.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this conference, the Fine International Conference on Gigapixel Imaging, hosted by Carnegie Mellon. This conference brings together 200 scientists, educators, and students, not only from our region, but from across the US and, in fact, from 12 other countries. For those of you who've traveled a long ways to join us for this conference, I also welcome you to Pittsburgh, especially with our fine fall weather. And speaking of fines, no pun intended, I'd like to recognize the Fine Foundation, and especially Sheila and Milton Fine, who will be joining us later this evening, for their generous support of this conference and making it all possible. And of course, the Fine Foundation has also been the supporters of the Fine Fellows Program, and as we've heard, there's now been 4 workshops that have trained people in the use of this technology. And it's really through Sheila and Milton's fine support that this has been possible. Sheila and Milton are also great supporters of art, science, and medicine, with a special focus on things that go on in the Pittsburgh area. Pittsburgh, actually, one of our great assets here, our sort of special assets, is we have a very great number of philanthropies, foundations that are very supportive of us going about in new technology and taking a lot of risks that are hard to fund using more traditional scientific methods. And Carnegie Mellon has benefited tremendously from all of the foundations, including the Fine Foundation. Actually, the Gigapan camera is a great introduction to Carnegie Mellon University in many ways. The technology involves a combination of robotics and human-computer interaction, the electrical engineering, image processing, all of which are areas that we have a lot of strength in, and in particular, our School of Computer Science has a a very broad view of what computer science is. And so we encompass all these areas and consider them to all be part of not just how do you make computers and build them, but what computer technology and digital technology can be used for and how it can affect the world and society. And so the Gigapixel Gigapan camera is a great example of very interesting technology, but also serving a real purpose for the world, and really bringing together people from the world together and making information available to them that would be very difficult to do in other ways. And so we're very delighted that National Geographic has been an early partner with the Gigapan conference, and through collaboration among the CMU's Create Lab, National Geographic, and NASA, the Global Connection Project was formed. As some of you may know, the Global Connection Project provides a whole new interactive way for people to learn about and meet their neighbors from across the globe. Educating people about distant places and cultures has been a hallmark of National Geographic for more than a century. Mark Bauman, our speaker for tonight, is the Executive Vice President of National Geographic Television, and he is, from his time at National Geographic, enthusiastically embraced the potential of Gigapan to advance National Geographic's mission and has encouraged its use among their staff photographers. So CMU and National Geographic have long been at work improving cultural understanding and solving real problems through the power of new types of imaging. So we're very fortunate to have him here to speak on National Geographic and Gigapixel imaging. Mark's work at National Geographic is the latest chapter in what has been an esteemed career in journalism. Prior to joining National Geographic about 10 years ago, Mark was based in Eastern Europe and Latin America, where he ran Baghdad and Balkan coverage for ABC News. He's provided coverage of wars in Central Africa, Lebanon, Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq for major media outlets including ABC, BBC, CNN, NPR, and leading metropolitan newspapers across the U.S. and around the world. He's earned numerous awards and honors for broadcast and print journalism, including an Emmy Award. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for tonight, Mark Bauman.
Wow. It's an honor to be here tonight and to be the warm-up band for the incredible array of speakers that Illah's lined up for you across the next few days. I see a bunch of events that I wish I was going to be at tomorrow and Saturday. I've seen a lot of the incredibly cool things that people have done with Gigapan technology, so I don't kid myself that some of the stuff I'm about to offer you is new or revolutionary. But the thing I love about still photography is that it has the power to connect the head and the heart. And as I think most of you know, Gigapan technology and the Gigapan interface sort of ramps up the tool set you've got available to you on both fronts. Why is National Geographic interested? These are the things that we focus on lately, and I think it hits on every major priority that we have as an institution. Geographic and global literacy, media literacy, scientific literacy, and one of the things that I'm most excited about recently is crowdsourced science and citizen participation science. I think that it's no secret that we've gone through a couple of periods recently where science has been devalued as part of the public debate. And I sure would like to see people connected to it more palpably. And I think this is one great technology that's moving people in the right direction. We've worked with Illah and Dror on a number of things recently. But one of the things that I've enjoyed most is that we've staged photo camps in underserved communities that focus on scientific and cultural literacy. And what surprised me about this technology, which is primarily digital, is that it works for people on the wrong side of the digital divide. This photo you see right here was taken on an Indian reservation in South Dakota where they don't have much broadband. And these guys created Post-it stickers so that they could start to meta-tag their community and areas inside their community. And start to learn about the power of photography and its ability to connect them to their own community. We're also using gigapixel imaging to allow the public to explore environments that you just can't see with your own two eyes. So let me see if this 6-year-old laptop will get me back to where I need to go. A couple of years ago, Mike Fay, who most of you have probably met, walked a transect from the southernmost redwood tree to the northernmost, a linear distance of 700 miles, although, as Mike will probably tell you, he didn't walk it in a straight line. In 1850, old-growth redwoods occupied 2 million acres of the California folks. But after a lot of people failed to strike it rich in the gold rush out there, they started logging the giant trees to fuel the building boom out there. And by 1968, nearly 90% of the original redwood trees had been logged. National Geographic, Nick Nichols, his partner in crime, wanted people to think about these magnificent trees and how we could preserve and even expand their range. So as part of the article that Mike wrote, Nick Nichols produced the first ever high-definition seamless composite photograph of an entire redwood tree. Now, this tree right here, 300 feet tall and somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 years old. Nick believes that this could be the most complex architectural tree in the world. And you can't see it this way in nature. You can stand at the bottom and look up. If you were on a rope line, you could see little pieces of it. But essentially, what Nick had to do is create a 4-camera array and drop it 3 feet at a time and take 84 photos and put them together. Now, as you can see, we've got a really cool high-resolution image of this tree, which we hope will connect both hearts and minds, but we have a really clumsy interface. And one of the things that we're talking about doing is putting all of our gigapixel images into the GigaPan site. Because right now, well, I've got it loaded up on this computer at pretty low resolution, but you can dive into any piece of this tree you want. Look at the leaves. In a lot of these trees, the leaves that fall actually create mulch areas up high, and other trees start to grow. I mean, there are frogs and ecosystems that exist in the canopy that would be great for kids to experience. There are a whole lot of environments on the planet that you just can't necessarily experience with the naked eye, or that you can't see fully from anywhere. A few years ago, Kenny Broad in West Skiles, who was one of the bravest underwater photographers in the world, wanted to share the dark and toxic blue hole environments of the Bahamas with the broader public. And they knew that the most effective way to do that was with a gigapixel image. I mean, these are caverns, and when you light a piece of them, you only see, a few feet at a time. So Kenny spent a whole lot of time figuring out how to do this, and then, this is one of the last photographs he ever took. So
Cascade Room photograph.
Here's a bit of the story behind it.
Real endeavor, and my goal was to capture an image that translated to the audience what it feels like to be down inside the earth. All underwater cave photography is hard. We have no real communication to talk to people. We are 100% dependent on a very, very talented team to operate lights and strobes and perform complex and difficult diving maneuvers. This is a complex picture. I had to figure out a way to do a transect line that would allow me to keep the camera at the same depth and keep it at the same angle in a cave. I had to find this spot that I could do this. I took it as a series of photographs. Only the central corridor would be lit, and that above it would be black, and below it would be black.
Wes took great risk in his photographs. The long, narrow compositions, he stitched picture after picture together so finely to make this compelling image that captures the mystery.
An assignment like this, my photo count was 34,000 photographs. A great photograph is pure magic, and it's amazing how seldom it actually occurs.
I chose Wes Skiles' picture because he takes us to a place we've never seen before. It's a celebration of the diversity of the world, and it's a celebration of exploration.
So that Wes Skiles photo and the Nick Nichols photo were both fold-outs in our magazine, and people could hold them, experience them, in a tactile way. But as more of our magazine subscribers migrate to platforms like the iPad, it's become critical that we offer them value-added experiences and richer ways to experience our photography, and ways that they can engage in dialogue with it and around it. I think the sky's the limit on this stuff. I think there aren't people out there, or there are very few people out there who don't want to participate in expeditions. I think we can use this technology to do species counts. One of my colleagues from the camp we did 18 months ago has been using it for bee counts. I know Mike's been thinking about using it for elephant counts along with satellite data. For archaeology and paleontology, it's an amazing technology, particularly with aerial platforms. And the public engagement piece is really what appeals to me. What we would like to see, I think every year we're going to launch expeditions that allow the public to be virtual participants and help us find pyramid sites, and then help us meta-tag. Well, start with the satellite data, identify the sites, and then meta-tag all of the artifacts in situ, in 3D. We'd love to create 3D environments for exhibits that kids can walk through. I mean, that TUD Interactive we've played with in a star cave environment and done 3D versions of it. But you can imagine kids in inner city schools that can't afford to go to a lot of the great sites on the planet, being able to walk through them anyway, being able to experience them online, and to repeat the discoveries that we've all been part of, but more importantly, I think, to be part of the discoveries. I mean, the ability to meta-tag this stuff and to capture more data than you can in a single photograph, so that none of us, when we take a Gigapan, are even aware of all that's there. Opens up the opportunity for discovery, and that's what excites me. So we've talked to NASA about crowdsourcing the exploration of galaxies, but there's a lot on this planet still left to discover, and for us anyway, Gigapixel Imaging and the Gigapan program are going to be a big part of it, along with satellite imagery. So I will not stand between you and your wine any longer. But I'm happy to take a few questions if you'd like.
We'd love to have some interactive discussion, so questions?
So how do the rest of us get our hands on those copters and those blimps?
That's a good question. I mean, anybody can get a balloon. they're not ideal. In terms of us being able to provide them in some sort of scalable way, we're not there yet. But maybe in partnership with Illah and others, we will be. I mean, we're working, as are a number of people, on underwater heads to do this. I'd love to have a reef environment that kids could metatag, that the world could metatag, and could watch through time, through bleaching events and all of that. I wish there was a good answer to that question. I mean, I think it's all about being creative. That octocopter you see only costs a few $1,000s, and you can buy a gimbal, you can start to play with it. That's what we're doing. Looking for things that are light and easy to deploy in the field, and trying to make them work in different environments.
Building on that, have you connected to the maker community, that are let's say, publicly making available the spec for what you build, so that others could tinker with it?
No. Maybe we should at some point, but most of what we do is based around scientific, cultural, and environmental literacy, and publishing the tech specs of the toys that we play with hasn't been core to what we do, and some of it is just modifying off-the-shelf stuff anyway. So I'm not even sure that we've got the right to do that, but it's definitely worth thinking about.
Go ahead. Okay. The 3D gigapens you've been working on, are they purely perceptive 3D, or does it actually create a model that can be used in other media?
So there are, you can take the data and put it into a number of systems. So yes, it creates a model that you can play with in other systems, definitely.
On the stereoscopic optical pairs that you're generating from the octocopter, are you using baseline imaging where you're putting the copter in two specific positions, or are you using multiple imaging systems right at the source?
We're using, essentially two cameras with stereo separation. Pretty simple.
Following up on the question about different ways to display the data, as a teacher, I'm always looking for ways that students can put together things and create. And I would just be really interested to know the Egyptian one. Do you have some details on what you used and how you got that ability to zoom in and rotate?
You can do that with any gigapixel image. I mean, we used a robotic head and a camera. I mean, Illah can talk you through that, as can most of the people in the room. We used a robotic head to do a grid around the room, everywhere except where the photographer was standing, and then stitching software to put it all together.
We need to stop the questions there because of the program that's ongoing, but Mark will be at the gallery opening in a few minutes. So first of all, let's thank Mark for coming.
Now red wine.
We have a keynote gift for Mark. Unfortunately, one of our other keynote speakers is in the audience, so he's going to find out what his gift is. So, sorry, David, you're finding out early. We have a very, very thick, very dry, but fantastic book by Stefan Oderman about the history of the panorama as a mass medium device.
Thank you.
And that's been signed by everybody in the Create Lab.
Thank you.
And then we have the opposite end. We have Panorama, a fold-out book for children, which when you fold it out has a panorama 25 feet long in it.
Wow.
So that's possibly the longest printed panorama you can buy in a bookstore.
Fantastic. Thanks. I've been playing with it with my kids.
We have a couple of more orders of business here before we can open the gallery show. I hope that the keynote presentation was a wonderful way to fill you with some inspiration and some excitement about everything we're going to be talking about. I love having the interactive component at the end. We're going to make sure that the entire 2.5 days is interactive like that. We're going to have a whole lot of discussions and mixing of ideas amongst all the participants, the authors, the invited speakers, and the invited poster presenters. Now, in order to be able to go to the gallery, we need to recognize some of what makes it possible for us to have such a thing as the Fine International Conference and to have this wonderful gallery show. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be recognizing the wonderful scientists whose photographic representations have been recognized and chosen for the gallery, which you're going to see, and printed full size. And yes, there's wine there too, and there's hors d'oeuvres as well. But we're really excited to introduce you to the scientists who won the curated gallery competition and won a place in that gallery. But to do that, I've asked to have the honor of the presence of the Fines here. Now, all of you keep hearing me say the Fine Foundation, and so it's time to tell you a little bit more about that. The tripod that really made Gigapan possible was an initial collaboration between Google, National Geographic, and NASA. And it was really those three organizations that agreed to work with Carnegie Mellon to invent a whole new kind of technology. And we're always indebted to those organizations for that process. And in fact, tomorrow's speaker is Alan Eustace from Google, recognizing, just as the day after tomorrow's keynote speaker is from NASA, Dave Korsmeyer, that it is that tripod that makes all of this possible from a technological point of view. But technological funding has a limit, and that is the vision to fund new technology is a high-risk endeavor that we're very excited and thankful for, but there's a completely different kind of vision that we need in our society, and that is the vision to take new technology and take the risk of applying it in completely new ways for sociological good. That's something that's hard to do from the likes of a corporation, and that's something that we often turn to foundations for. So the pleasure that we have is in the relationship that we've been able to build over the last 4 years with the Fine Foundation. The Fine Foundation is the funder of the entire program of science outreach that Carnegie Mellon runs with Gigapan. It is that foundation that funds every workshop that we have run over the last 4 years, and the international conference this year is principally funded by them, together with some corporate sponsors that are on the program booklet. So it's really because of their vision and their willingness to invest in something that can have positive social good in the science community and in the science communication community that this whole thing can exist. It's sort of our raison d'etre to be here tonight is because of that. And in doing that, I want to recognize two people that we're very close to at the Fine Foundation. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about Sheila Fine, who's in the audience today. Sheila has been a real champion and supporter throughout these years and has been really excited to see how you as scientists have been able to use gigapixel imaging. The handwritten notes that we've encouraged scientists to write have been read by Sheila and Milt, and I'm very pleased to say that they're working. They gave us continued funding for this year, so that's good. So keep writing those notes. It is Sheila's compassion and empathy, her intellectual curiosity, and her desire to change the world in a positive way that have really made it possible for the Fine Foundation to have the vision to make this possible. At the same time, I also want to recognize Milt Fine. I'm actually introducing him because I'm going to ask Milt to join me here in front of the stage where we're going to give a bit of an award to each of the gallery selectees. Let me introduce Milt first. Milt's biography is long, and I've been trying to think of the right word to present this. The right way to present this to me is to say that he has been visionary both in the business world and in the philanthropic foundation world, and in the trustee world of organizations like the Carnegie Museum of Art and the Andy Warhol community. He's on the board of trustees of many key organizations. He was a chair of the board for the Carnegie Museum of Art. He was also a founder and on the board of the Andy Warhol Museum, which is one of the most famous museums that we have here in Pittsburgh. He is a chairman of the board of the Carnegie Museum of Art. He was, as I said, chairman of the board of the Carnegie Museum of Art. He's also chairman of the Fine Foundation itself, which is the organization that makes this conference and all the workshops possible. And I asked Milt to come up to the stage and say a few words about what they think of the entire Gigapixel for Science inquiry that we've led over the last few years. May I ask you to come up, Milt?
I want to thank Illah for everything that he's done to put this program together. I enjoyed listening to the lecture. I have to say that I didn't understand one of the questions. So even though the technology is beyond me, I am amazed and delighted with the results. It was a great pleasure to watch this. And I want to add my welcome to all of you. I know many of you have come here to Pittsburgh to be part of this conference. And I want to congratulate all of you for the wonderful work that you're doing. You know, when I first met Illah and listened to his plans and his hopes, I was intrigued by the idea of using a visual art form to facilitate important scientific work. And since then, Gigapan has become a much more familiar tool, really, around the world. For example, my daughter Sybil, who lives in England, worked with Illah to organize a conference there for European scientists to learn the technique that Gigapan makes possible. Running a foundation is very much like running a business in that you look to invest in projects that will have an impact, that are practical and doable. And one of the things that I particularly liked about Gigapan is that it tends to break down walls between art and science, and walls separating the various scientific disciplines. As one who loves art, I'm intrigued that Gigapan is a technique which presents very beautiful and very stunning views of objects and life, and at the same time permits scientific observations and discoveries which otherwise would be very difficult or even impossible. The arts and the sciences both rely on imagination, creativity, innovation, and the marriage of these fields is in itself a very bold and daring venture, and it opens the door to other kinds of collaboration and sharing among the various areas of knowledge, exploration, and creativity. You know, in our society, we tend to become accustomed to separate silos and separate labels. We sometimes forget that our civilization advances the most when we share ideas and share concepts and tools from a variety of sources, familiar and unfamiliar. In academia and in business and in government, there, of course, are separate departments, agencies, institutions, each dealing with very separate and distinct subjects. And yet, as we live our lives, the lines between subjects frequently are very blurry and very indistinct. We gain very much from having a holistic approach to life, a big picture look, whether we're trying to solve problems or accomplish a mission. In the New York Times the other day, David Brooks wrote a very interesting article, some of you may have seen it, about American exceptionalism. And I want to read a quote from that article. "The main point in this composite story is that creativity is not a solitary process. It happens within networks. It happens when talented people get together, when idea systems and mentalities merge." Now, having all of you here today from many different occupations, many different endeavors, is remarkable and it's constructive. And it points the way to much greater achievement and progress. In my own work and in my business, I've never been a specialist. Of course, one needs specialties and specialists. But there's very little specific that I can do, but I think I'm pretty good at doing things in general. And actually, in our personal lives, and even in our business lives, we usually don't specialize. Life simply won't allow us to do that. We have to constantly deal with frustrations, feelings, emotions, challenges, failures, all sorts of issues. And to do this, we need to draw upon sometimes philosophy, psychology, economics, history, and many other fields. We need patience, we need resilience, and we need wisdom to navigate through life. So we have to graft all of those areas of knowledge onto our specialties. And while Gigapan presents amazingly clear and detailed images, the meaning of these images and their consequence is not always so clear. Being able to break out of our silos becomes a necessity. So I want to pay tribute to all of you for seizing this initiative and for being able to see life through a much wider lens. And in this city where we pay some attention to football, I want to congratulate you for advancing the ball considerably. And again, I want to thank Illah for making this possible and for being a very multidimensional person who knows how to turn fuzzy images and dreams into very hard reality. So thank you again.
So we're going to ask the awardees to come up. I'll name them, and perhaps you can accept the certificate from Milt. We made panoramic aspect ratio certificates, since your images are all panoramic. And so first, from the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, we have Eagle's Nest, which was taken in Saudi Arabia, which you'll see upstairs. And Richard Bryant was the photographer. He couldn't join us, so Chris Beard and Sandy Olson from the Museum of Natural History here will be accepting his award on his behalf.
Thank you very much. I have a copy of this that I treasure very much. Thanks for doing that.
The second one we have is, you're going to see a massive ball of fish upstairs. It's a baked ball of Salima. And this was taken by Jason Buchheim, who's also in the audience. So the actual photographer is here in this case.
Look at me. Jason, look at me. Smile.
Next, we have photographers, both of whom are here. So we have two certificates for them. This is entitled The Big Four, a sampling of the 4 megadiverse insect orders. You're going to see a whole lot of insects upstairs, thanks to Andrew Deans and Matthew Bertrand.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Thank you.
Look at me.
Next, we have a amazing scanning electron microscope of a barnacle, a single barnacle made extremely large, much larger than any barnacle grows. And the picture was taken by Molly Gibson, and accepting the award on her behalf is Jay Longson. Next, we have a very unusual picture. It's a picture of reality, except it can't be real reality. You're going to see a whole lot of hummingbirds, even though there's only usually 2, on one beautiful bergamot bush upstairs. And this was taken by Chris Fasty, who's in the audience here. We have 3 more. We have from Sierra de En Medio. It's a picture that you will enjoy, and it was taken by Rurik List.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look at me. Thank you.
Next, we have yet another Fine Fellow. We can call them Fine Fellows when they are Fine Fellows and they're inductees of the Fine program. This is a picture by Dennis van Engelsdorp and Michael Andre, if they would both come up. And this is interesting because it's a picture of a giant panorama of an unhealthy bee frame from inside a beehive. That is the conclusion of the programming we're going to have in this room. I'm going to invite you now. Wow, we're 30 seconds late. Sorry about that. I'm going to invite you to the preview opening of the exhibit, which will be open to the public as of tomorrow morning. It's upstairs on the 3rd floor. Am I right? 3? Yes. Okay, I'm seeing shaking of heads. So go on upstairs to the 3rd floor. There's hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and you can actually enjoy all of the Gigapanoramas up there. Thank you again for attending the very beginning of the conference.